Jeff.
I'm Tom.
And pitch hitting tonight for Kim.
I'm Nick.
And we are three old Reds fans coming to you from Studio 82, just down the street from our good friends at Beans in the heart of Cedarville and the birthplace of Bumpus Jones. Actually, this week we are two old Reds fans and one young one. Kim is on vacation out having his Western adventure in such remote places as Billings, Montana, Idaho, all kinds of places.
Staying away from St. Louis.
Staying away from St. Louis as much as possible. Maybe he was in L.A. this weekend and we didn't know it. We can blame him.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But filling in for him is Nick Carrington. And Nick is a friend of mine. We work together. And he does some writing for the Red Leg Nation blog.
That's right.
And just tell us how you kind of, before we jump into all the stuff we want to do, just tell us why you're a Reds fan, how long you've been a Reds fan, and how you got writing for the blog and why you like to do that.
Sure. So my father grew up in the Big Red Machine era. And,
like us.
And like you. So I'm here to learn from my elders on this podcast today. And just loved the team and told all the old stories about the grade 8 and those guys. And so my brother and I were indoctrinated as kids, and we couldn't escape it. And so listening to Marty and Joe on the radio by the fire constantly at night is nothing we could do. My mom had no power over the situation.
It's soothing to listen, or was to listen to Marty and Joe. Joe's not there anymore.
No.
Kind of a soothing summer,
Yeah.
kind of part of being summer.
It was part of being summer, and those are special memories. And Joe was always the optimistic one. I miss Joe.
Yeah.
Joe was very optimistic. I miss the cheers behind the home run calls.
Yeah.
Get out of here!
Yeah,
get out of
get
here!
out. Those were good.
And he got a little slurred speech as the game went on as well.
Well, yeah, and he had the nice. He had the whistle one on his S's
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the end of his career, I remember this, listening to a game with my dad once, and I'll never forget this. It was a 2-1 ball game. The Reds were winning, and there were two guys on for the other team, and they hit a fly ball, and Joe said, "Fly ball left field, going back." And my dad and I thought, "Oh, it's a nice routine fly ball." And then the next thing he says, "And it's a 4-2 ball game." And we were enraged.
He never said home run.
No, we thought it was a routine out. And
Yeah,
so,
that was Joe. So tell us about the blog and why you enjoy doing that and how long you've been doing it.
the blog started, I think, in January 2015. They had a call for writers, and being a writer myself and obsessed with the Reds, I thought this is the perfect way to apply those skills. And so I applied, and against their better judgment, they gave me this opportunity. And I think they've regretted it ever since, so they can't get rid of me.
Well, now that blog's grown pretty fast.
Yeah,
Seems like it has.
You know, we get I think 3,000 to 5,000 visitors a day, and up, especially around the trade deadline, we get up maybe around 8,000 visitors a day. So they do pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, you get us three old Red fans reading it every week. I know that.
Yeah. We look at it. I get it. Pops in my email. Whenever it's new, I subscribe and just do I take time? Do I have time to read every post? No, but I see what's there. Some things I'm more apt to read than others. I know you don't do like the recap stuff, and some other guys do that, but you write some other pieces. What's the kind of the favorite thing you wrote?
I do a lot of feature pieces where they let me come up with some ideas, and as long as it's not too crazy, they let me run with it. But I think my favorite piece was actually writing about how the relationship between baseball, the Reds, and my family, and how that was passed down to me. I think it's called A Reds Family. And just special memories of growing up like that and looking forward to those things. I have a 2-year-old son and a 10-month-old son, and they don't have a chance. They're decked out in Reds gear.
Yeah.
When I left today, my son was in full Reds gear. He's 10 months old.
You're a good man. That means you're a good father.
That's right. Raise them in the way they should go and all of that. So that was my favorite piece, just being able to reflect on my Reds fandom and what it's meant to my family, because it's the way that my father and I really bonded, and I hope something that I can do with my children too.
Yeah, I had that same kind of experience myself. I mean, I can remember my grandparents listening to Marty and Joe. When I go over to their house, they'd have the game on, right? Yeah. And then my dad and I, we always had this little square radio we brought to the games with us, and we listened to the game while we were at the game. I still
Exactly.
have, my dad died. I still have the radio on my shelf that we used to take to the games. I just couldn't.
Did you keep score?
I kept score. Dad didn't. But
Okay.
I used to like to keep score.
Well, my 2-year-old got to go to his first game, and they give him a first game certificate.
Oh,
now.
that's
You
neat.
know, get it. It's neat, and it's framed, and it's special to me. He doesn't care a lick about it, but it's special to me.
That's cool.
And did you go to many games when you were growing up? I
I
mean, you were over in Portsmouth area, and it's not super close.
Getting into high school and college, I started going to more games. We went to Riverfront a few times growing up, probably, I don't know, 6 to 8 times during my childhood. But I think there was a season when I was in high school or college where we started going 8 to 10 times a year with friends. We just get a group together, and it was fun to go down to the ballpark. And you get pretty cheap tickets.
Oh, yeah.
Usually the bleachers out there in left field.
We had the $4 tickets with because didn't they just have $4 tickets? Or they're going
This
to?
weekend
Is
for
it this,
Pete
is it
Rose.
this weekend.
4 tickets for 28.
Yeah, and
I
they were
forget what
doing,
it
and
is.
they were doing some $4 ones because of Scooter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they were doing for something. I don't remember what the deal was.
Riverfront used to have the top 4 for $3.50.
$3.50. Yeah, you buy those and then move down.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
That's what we did. So I can remember going to Riverfront in the early days when it was open, and it was this beautiful thing then. And then of
Well,
course
Jeff's the only one of the 3 of us that has been to all 3 parks.
Yeah, I was at Crosley when I was a little kid, and I don't remember. I was probably 5 years old. I don't remember it, but I went to Crosley once. So
Too bad they don't have a picture
that's
of
what my
that.
dad tells me. So anyway, well, great. Well, we're glad to have you here, Nick. We're going to talk about some stuff and look for your insights. And so, just kind of leading off here, I thought we'd look at the good and the bad and the ugly of the last week. We do this every week, and so we sort of look at the season in weeks kind of right now instead of series so much. So the good, pretty simple, right? Scooter and the sweep, right?
Yeah,
So did you get to watch it? Were you watching Were you watching that night?
I did. I got to see Scooter.
We were all
We
watching.
were all watching. We were texting like, "Oh my gosh, I
gotta be
can't believe
kidding me.
this." So nobody saw that coming. You're a lot younger than us, Nick. Is that like the greatest thing you've ever seen in baseball?
Especially to see a part-time player do that, you just don't expect something like that from him. The no-hitters from Homer were nice, but I think this might top him.
Local kid, right?
Yeah.
Born in Cincinnati. I don't know where he went. He moved. I don't think he went to high school there,
No,
but
he
he was born there, so that's cool. Joe Poznansky wrote a column. Do you know who Joe Poznansky is?
Yeah.
Writes for MLB. Used to write for Kansas City Star. Longtime baseball writer. Covered George Brett and all those guys back in those days. He wrote a piece, and he said at the end of it, he was looking at lots of different things, and he had an interesting stat he was looking at. But at the end, he said because of the sheer unlikeliness of it
Yeah.
and everything else, and everything he did that night, this might be the greatest single performance anybody's ever had in baseball. And so that's
Well,
an interesting.
It is.
It's in the top 5 if you want to start debating them. So
We debated this before. I think Reggie's 3 home runs on 3 pitches is
pretty big.
probably in the World Series. That would be hard to. That would be hard to
The
beat.
stage is
that
different.
was
But for a Red,
for a red.
this you would have to say without question.
Well, the only other thing you can match up with it is Vandermeer 2 back-to-back no hitters.
Yeah,
That's not a single performance, but still.
yeah. That second
quite a
one,
feat.
It's quite a
Quite a
feat.
feat.
As far as an individual feat, those 2 things probably stand out. Pete getting the hit record and stuff like that is cool. His hitting streak was great. That's a top 5 thing in Reds history.
Right.
Is his hitting streak, 44 games. So those things are. It's interesting to think about where that matches up. So
It's not a feat, but as a Reds fan, I think one of my favorite moments was the Jay Bruce Clinchmas home run. That was more
amazing.
exciting just because of the stage and because it had been since '95 since they had been in the playoffs, and so I had lived a deprived life of non-Reds playoff baseball. I remember '95.
But you don't remember 90.
I don't remember '90.
Yeah.
I was pretty young in '90.
That's like me not really remembering like 70.
the early 70s.
The early 70. I can
Right.
remember the 72 World Series is really the first thing I kind of have some. I can remember watching that series,
Yeah.
but in 70, what I remember of it is probably because I've seen highlights. I don't really
Yeah.
remember it. So
'95. I think was the first year I can remember quite a bit with Ron Gant and Reggie Sanders and Larkin still.
And Reggie Sanders striking out every time in the
Yeah.
playoff series. That's what I remember.
What a great year he had. But man, that's all people remember.
He struck out like 12 times.
Yeah.
But he looked good doing it.
I was living in Virginia at the time, and they were doing the cutaways. They were showing every game. That's when they started showing games regionally and stuff. I'm like, I will take you to some Reds action. We'll switch over here. The Reds got 2 guys on base. Reggie Sanders up. He'd strike out. It's like I saw that like 5 times in a week. I'm like, are you kidding me? No, he did. So,
But besides the Clinchmas thing, the Scooter thing's up there.
Yeah.
As far as excitement.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is a typical picture of this season where we show brilliance, right? And you get because it's a fun team to watch.
They are fun.
So you see brilliance, and then it just falls off in
Yeah.
something like the Dodger series happened.
yeah. So then we get to the bad, which was games 1 and 2, right? First game was that the one they got blown out pretty much?
Yeah.
And then game 2, they come back,
We thought we had it.
and we thought we were going to pull that out, and then Corey Seager happens, and then
And then certainly
then
we
we
thought
get
we
the
were gonna
ugly
win.
on Sunday when I'm already like, it's the last time I text and say, well, everything holds. We're going to be within 2 games. I'm not doing that anymore. I just took, I feel like the total jinx on that. Of course, I don't really believe
With
in jinxes,
Iggy,
but
with Iggy coming in,
Well, yeah.
you got to feel like they're going to hold that.
Yeah.
But I would say it was ugly. That was totally an anomaly, right?
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
it happens.
Iglesias has
That's
been lights
baseball.
out,
Right.
and he was rusty coming back in after 3 days off or whatever. So
it happens.
Those happen. You can't expect him to have a sub 1 ERA the whole season.
No.
You know?
it's
So-
nice to go to San Diego next. It's kind of like going to Philadelphia next or something. You have a
Yeah, they've
not
had
so
a
great
little
team.
more success there. Not much, but LA. What they lost? How many straight in LA
9?
they lost now?
8 or 9.
It's maybe more than that. I don't know.
Well, LA is
It's-
a pretty good team. I think the matchup in St. Louis was much better. St. Louis has such a struggling offense that it kind of mitigated our starting pitching concerns, and then
Yeah.
LA is just a better team.
Yeah, they are. They're a better team. Still should have won one of those games.
Yeah.
You know, you figure.
If not
We
two.
talked last week. We always talk about what kind of weeks it's going to be. We're like, I hope we go 2-5, and then we went 4-3. In the end, it was a 4-3 week,
Way better than we expected.
and that's over 500. So you have to that's the way this team is.
And we're still within.
You take the good
2.5?
with the bad
What are
and
we
the
right?
ugly, and what are we now? Is it
Is it
3?
2.5
It's,
out?
something like that.
It's 3, I
and
think.
we got good news on the pitching front this week too.
Yeah.
Homer Bailey and Finnegan made starts in Double-A.
Yeah, they did.
Listen, I know they're not Johnny Cueto, but those guys are going to be a big upgrade to what we have
my
today.
goodness.
Because
Yeah.
we have a bunch of AAA guys going.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're picking people off the scrap heap now and pitching them. Buchanan out of the bullpen and
Oh, my gosh.
Wojciechowski,
Yeah.
Bryce.
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just been a lot of guys. We'll move on to. Let's switch that since you start talking about pitching. Let's switch gears here. Before we do that, let's talk. Just remind everybody to follow us on the Podbean app and the Podbean website. You can just search 3 Old Reds Fans if that's not where you found us. iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn Radio app, Pocket Cast, all kinds of other podcast apps. If you just search 3 Old Reds Fans, you'll find us. Subscribe to us, that'd be great. So you'll be sure not to miss any shows. We have Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, Pinterest, all kinds of stuff like that. You can search 3 Old Reds Fans. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. You can talk to us any of those ways. We'll see it all. Tell us who you think the next Reds ace is going to be, because we're going to talk about that next, if we have any clue on that whatsoever. Give us answers to trivia questions. We'll be doing a trivia question at the end of today. And so,
And selfish plug.
and read Nick on Red Leg Nation. And you got something coming out soon?
I'm supposed to do something this week.
Okay.
But we'll see what happens.
See what I know. How that
I'm
goes.
behind on the times here.
Okay, so we're about to talk about pitching, right?
Yeah, so that was who can be the ace? Because we talked about this last week, and we're like, who's in the pipeline?
I don't
know
see
if
it.
anybody's in the pipeline. So my question then, and I want your opinion first, Tom, if this is where you were going, can Bailey, DeSclafani, Finnegan, maybe even Lorenzen if they let him start, because a lot of people are like, put him in the rotation. I don't know if that's ever going to happen or if that's even a good idea. I haven't made up my mind on that. Can any of those guys come in and be still that number one? I mean, we're not going to get Kershaw, but can we get a Cueto type of guy out of any of those guys. What do you think? And then we'll see if Nick thinks anything on that.
So I would say no. I don't think any of those are a dependable, every fifth day shutdown pitcher.
Two? Are they twos?
Oh, yeah.
Twos and threes?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Homer's proven to be a good two. I think Finnegan has potential to be a 2 or 3. But you know how nice it is to have somebody where, Kershaw's pitching.
Well, that was great. We didn't have to face Kershaw this week, and I thought we ought to win at least one game. We went to face Kershaw. Well, and, there went that theory.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that's the big difference with the Cards too, right? Well, they're not quite the same. They don't have that Wainwright or whatever to shut down.
No, they're not as good. They're getting older.
The aging is a big problem.
The aging, yeah. What do you think? Any of these guys, can any of them be that? I mean, we hope a Homer has the talent. Doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Well, and you don't know what to expect coming back from Tommy John surgery. I mean, he hasn't really pitched in 2 years. So he was kind of on a good trajectory, I think, to really being maybe one of the top 30 guys in baseball. I don't know. I think I generally agree that they're probably not going to find one from those guys. At least a Johnny Cueto type. Yeah. But and I'm concerned about DeSclafani too. His injury, we might be looking at another Tommy John surgery, and they've waited so long that they may not have him back next year either. Yeah. Which is a concern. Finnegan, I don't see him as an ace. The command isn't there for me. He had the second highest walk rate of any starter in baseball last year, and even if that improves, it's a long way to improve to consider a guy like that an ace. Mm-hmm. You just can't walk people. Lorenzen's the interesting guy to me in that he has 2 pitches that they're probably his best pitches now. He never threw as a starter in 2015. Really? He never threw them once. He had a very straight fastball that got hammered. You can go look at the numbers in 2015. So he went the offseason, he learned this really hard sinker, and he learned this really hard cutter. And they might be his 2 best pitches, and he never threw them as a starter.
His cutter's nasty.
Yeah, it moves a lot, and the sinker's really good too. He just needed something that wasn't so straight, because no matter how hard you throw it, if it's straight, people will catch up to it.
They'll hit it, yeah. You can't throw it fast enough to throw it by these guys consistently.
Exactly. And so it'd be interesting to see if they ever gave him a chance, and I don't think they will, what that would look like.
What do you think's keeping them from trying him at starter? What do they got to lose?
I don't know. That's the big question, isn't it?
I mean, what do you have to lose at this point?
I kept wondering if it was health, and they have repeatedly said in the Inquirer that it's not health. They think he can handle starters' innings, but
and he only has to go 5 innings to be better.
Yeah, you know what? And he's gone 3 a couple times this year, and pretty efficiently.
Just give us 6 innings. That's all we need. Yeah. Of course, he's part of the reason 6 innings works most of the time. Do you think they fear would destroy the bullpen, and that's a good thing we got going, or
they got Wandy and Iggy out there, right?
Yeah, so. And Storen's good enough. If Storen's your 3rd best guy,
I was wondering if he was waiting on Cingrani to come back and see
Cingrani.
Right, I know.
How many chances are we going to give him?
I know, but I can see that. I'm just trying to think like they might think, and they might think. I think there's still some faith in Cingrani on that team, and if he could be solid, that gives you an opportunity to move Lorenzen out without depleting your bullpen if he can be solid. But yeah, I'm not willing to bet the ranch on Cingrani by any means. No.
Okay.
Just trying to put myself in their head a little bit.
So if we're sitting here saying there's not a number 1, and would we all agree that you have to have a Cueto type pitcher in order to go into the playoffs?
That's preferable.
Name a team that hasn't at least gone second round of the playoffs without a shutdown number 1.
And you look at the Royals a few years ago; they traded for Cueto for that purpose to have him going into the playoffs.
And so my point is, if we're seeing that, how is the GM and how's Castellini? I mean, if he's really committed to winning, wouldn't you be looking for, even trading a Cozart and somebody else for a shutdown number 1?
It's hard to package
to get one
enough
nowadays.
People, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is there a guy like that who's going to be a free agent next year that anybody's willing to part with? I can't think of one.
No.
And that probably somebody else would want to grab him, like the Brewers or someone, right? Yeah. That's in first place.
Yeah.
I'll say this about some of the young guys, the minor league guys, and I know Reed and Stevenson have had their struggles and things like that, but you remember back Johnny Cueto's first 2 years weren't that
great?
Good.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
it took him. They gave him 60-some starts, which is one of the confusing things about what they're doing now with starting all these guys off the scrap heap. Is you have a lot of these young guys that couldn't do that much worse than what you've got going now.
Give them their 60 starts and see what
Yeah,
happens.
Cueto had 60, 65 starts where he showed flashes, but he really struggled for 2 years until it all came together and he became Johnny Cueto.
Here's the difference I think that I see, though, is when you watch a Feldman or an Alderman, like who pitched yesterday, these guys they're just hitting 90, 91. They don't have really biting stuff. I mean, we talked about Alderman's best pitch is probably that curveball he has. But a lot of these guys don't have really good stuff that could maybe Stevenson might, right?
Yeah, I'm
Supposed
talking
to.
about some of the not those guys. We're talking about like Reed and Stevenson and some of the guys they have even in Double-A, which I don't think they should bring up now. But Romano, once he gets going again, I think he had a rough outing last night or the night before. But you would expect them in a rebuilding year, even though it's gone a little better than expected, to put those guys out there and see what they can do, especially because right now they have the worst rotation in baseball.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was just looking, they're 28th
you can't
in Major
go-
League Baseball right now.
You can't
in
go
pitching.
much worse than that. And so that's what they did with Bailey, who struggled even worse
Oh,
than
yeah.
Cueto. And that's what they did with Cueto, was they gave him tons of starts, and they just said, work through it.
Is it maybe there's when those guys got to struggle, they were struggling alongside 3 or 4 guys that really weren't. Is there a fear of having a bunch of these guys do this at once, even though that's what we're getting anyway? I can see if you're contender having 3 or 4 guys that you're very dependable, and you let a Cueto or a Bailey struggle,
Or Garrett.
or a Garrett, like right now. But when you don't have anything ace 1, 2, 3 level there, I don't know that they're not taking that approach.
I think
I
maybe that's
wonder-
why they like Bronson being there, because even though he kind of sucks, he's been there. You know, he has the year 14 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, he was the guy I think that Jeff might be talking about. One of the guys that when they had Cueto and
Right.
Bailey and even Volquez, who were coming in, and these young guys who hadn't really proven themselves, and some of them really struggled. Arroyo was there. He was pitching. They had Harang, too. Had
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
good
yeah, yeah.
seasons
Harang
there.
was
So
solid.
They had some stability.
That's a good point, Jeff. I mean,
Well, I just wonder if it's like, let's not throw too many of these guys in there at once, and they got nothing to lean on or learn from, and they're just going to be. I don't know. I don't know what they think. They don't tell us much of what they think.
No.
They're pretty. Price is pretty buttoned up. He doesn't like.
yeah, there's no strategy discussions.
He
with the
doesn't
press.
like to
And
talk.
they don't return my phone calls. Just-
And nobody asks them good questions after the game on TV anyway. So because they don't ask really good questions. So, all right. So cool. One little note I added about I was thinking today was the bullpen has also become more traditional.
Mhm.
I mean, like with a setup and then a
There's
closer.
there's a piece on Red Leg Nation.
Yeah,
today.
and I read that today, and I had thought about that last week after we had our show, and I thought I want to talk about that. I meant to talk about that, and then I forgot to put it in our notes for today. And then I saw that piece. Like, oh yeah, I remember that. I want to talk about that. So
Well, you say that though, Jeff, but last night they put Iglesias in the 8th,
well, I know
which that's not a traditional.
not as traditional. I mean, he'll do that a lot, but it was bullpen by committee in the winter and in all spring. We're going to be, but as soon as Iglesias decided to do this, it's become more traditional.
Yeah.
Now whoever wrote the piece on the blog,
He was
he wasn't happy
He's
about
pretty
it.
critical.
He was very
He's
critical
critical.
of it, saying, "I thought we were going to have this new kind of bullpen, and now we're back to what everybody was doing, square one, so to speak." So I think I think it's helpful to know your roles a little bit than to be all over the place. But I think you can be outside the box now and then, which, I mean, Dusty never used a Aroldis more than an inning.
No.
Right.
Never. I mean, maybe a
Right.
couple times, but really never. And he will use Iglesias a little, like last night, he's like, I'm shutting this down. Well, it didn't work out, but, so I don't know. Anybody?
I don't know if there's any research on. I doubt it. It's all.
It's-
Is there any saver metrics on having a ninth inning only closer versus not? I mean,
no, I mean, not that I know of.
You could dig around and make up your own. You'd have to kind of do your own research
Yeah.
probably to figure that out. But
the idea, I think, is just to use your best pitchers in the most critical situations.
exactly.
And I don't think Price has done a bad job. I think he's done a good job, actually. I think you have to balance some of those things. I think they still might be concerned somewhat with Iglesias' arm troubles. They had him on a pretty good pace early in the season to have a bunch of innings, and it seems like they've kind of scaled that back. Still have Lorenzen on a pretty good pitch inning type thing, but yeah, I don't really know if there's been a change in philosophy, but he does seem to favor Iglesias in those later innings now, where he brought him in the fourth inning at one point.
Yeah, early in April,
the season,
like in April, yeah.
He's the closer now. I think you could say pretty definitively.
I think that I agree with knowing your role. I think that helps.
I don't have an issue with it. I just kind of wonder what you guys thought. I know it's just really changed. I thought it was worth bringing up for a second. All right, we're going to go throwback player of the week. Now, when we go throwback, we go back to the 70s and 80s. Now, I know you can't go back that far, Nick, but that's okay. Who when you were a kid, whatever, who did you really like?
I'm really proud of this one.
Are you?
I hope you guys like this. I hope you guys like
You
this.
can't say like Barry Larkin or something. That's just too easy.
No, but I got a middle infielder. Do you have any guesses?
Okay.
90s?
90s middle infield.
Bip Roberts.
No.
That's a good guess.
Later, drafted in the early 90s, later 90s into the new century.
I don't know. Just tell us.
Pokey Reese.
Pokey
Oh,
Reese.
Pokey Reese.
I love Pokey Reese.
Pokey Reese. I was a big fan of Pokey Reese.
Yeah.
He was a first-round pick in 1991. He's the 20th overall pick. I didn't
Was he
realize.
really?
Of the Reds? Was he always
He
with
was
the Reds?
He was with the Reds.
Yeah.
Played 5 seasons with the Reds from 97 to 2001. His best season was 99. You remember that 99 season where they had to go to the one-game playoffs?
Was that
Yes, with the Mets, right?
Al Leiter. Cursed be his name.
I was at that
You ever
game.
see him on MLB Network?
No,
He's
I don't get it, but I refuse to watch that guy.
He's on there.
I was excited to go to that game. It was such a disappointment.
He hit 285 that year, had a
That's a good year.
330 on base percentage, and slugged 417. If you're into WAR, he had a 4.3 WAR, which is really
That's
good.
really good for a middle infielder
It's
guy.
really good. He batted 250 in his Reds career, but he was a great defender. That's what you always remember about Pokey, is he could get to anything.
Yeah.
Premium defender at second base. He also won a World Series. You know who he won a World Series
I was going
with?
to ask you where he went after the Reds.
He played a little with the Pirates, but he won a World Series with the Red Sox
Is
in
that right?
2004.
All
And he
right.
made 4 appearances in the World Series.
Wow.
That was the year the curse was broken, right?
That's right.
Before.
Was he a
He's part of
defensive
it.
specialist?
He made 4 appearances in the World Series, mostly as a defensive replacement. Had 1 at bat and got out.
Well, he was playing behind. Who played shortstop for them? Garcia Parra? Was he on that? Was he their shortstop still?
They traded Garcia.
No, they traded him before
in
that.
The
Yeah.
middle
Right.
season.
You're right. You're
I
right.
think Pokey played the most games at short. I think it was kind of a revolving
Is that
door.
right?
But he didn't play in the World. He didn't start in the World Series.
Interesting.
I wonder who did.
That old Pokey Reese.
But he was a good Red.
That's a good one.
I like it. It's a good name.
Plus,
too.
it's a great name.
It's a good
Yeah,
name.
exactly.
We love those nicknames.
Yeah, we got Pokey. We had Pokey. Now we have Scooter.
And you know,
It's not quite as good as never as good as Bumpus. Bumpus from
Bumpus.
Cedarville is the first.
And I struggled between Pokey and Reggie Sanders. And after your Reggie Sanders comment, I'm glad I went with Pokey.
I just saw. That's all I remember. Reggie Sanders. But yeah, he had a great year that year. So all right, awesome. Yeah, that's good. So now we've had Lum, Reedus, Oster, and Reese. I like it. All right, our geeky stat of the week. I asked Nick, what's a stat you kind of like? And so we're going to go with, you call it O swing percentage?
That's what I call it.
And Z swing percentage. So it's 2 of several plate discipline statistics, Tom. I know you're
Oh, I love these.
you're learning your sabermetrics here. So the O swing is swings at pitches outside the zone divided by pitches outside the zone. So it's the percentage of time you swing at pitches
bad pitch.
outside the strike zone. And Z swing is inside the zone. Okay?
Okay, so I'm just saying up front without hearing any more. Joey Votto's got to be near the top of the list.
Yeah, well, I didn't look at league, but I looked at team, and he certainly leads the team in that.
I'd be
So I'll
interested
give
in who
you,
else.
Okay, team. We're going to go team first, all right? So team, the Royals swing the most of anybody outside the zone right
Is
now.
that right?
33.8%, and the Indians are the least at 25.4. And where do you think the Reds rank? Top half, bottom half?
I'd say top half, better.
Yeah,
better
they're
than average.
11th. They have the 11th best percentage in that, 28.6. Now, the inside the zone, the Royals also lead in that. So the Royals just go up there hacking, apparently.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's working out.
It's
for
not
them.
really working out for them.
And
They think they're the old lumber company from Pittsburgh, I think.
And when you think about that, it wouldn't work out. I mean, the opposing pitcher could just pitch forever,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because
Yeah, you got to be a little. They're not that disciplined. The Red Sox swing the least inside the zone at 62.7. The Reds are the 9th highest at 67.2. So, for us, how does this relate? And this made sense to me. We're going to get Nick's take on this too, but how this somewhat relates to some more familiar stats. Okay, so we see the Reds not swinging at a lot of bad pitches. You know, they're one of the better teams at not swinging at bad pitches, and they swing at strikes more than most people. All right, they're 5th in contact percentage, which is another one of these plate disciplines. The Astros are first by like 1.1% better than the Reds. So the Reds are making contact about as much as the Astros. The Astros are hitting about 15 points higher, or 12 points higher, something like that. Reds are 5th in batting average in I think it's in the majors. 12, or is it National League? Did I look? I don't remember.
no, they are overall. They're 5th.
They're
That's
5th.
all.
Okay, 12th in on base, 4th in slugging, and 4th in OPS, which makes sense because of the power that they have shown. We got two guys leading the league in home runs.
And by the way, 6th in defense.
yes,
So defensively and offensively.
right. So as far as that, they do that, and they're first, and they're still first in the NL in offensive WAR, right? And only behind the Yankees, who are just incredible right now.
They've got the judge.
They've got the judge. So before we get to the Reds players, I want to what is it about these stats, Nick, that you see that, and what does it tell you, and how do you piece this together and thinking about things?
Well, first you can be good in a variety of ways. There's not one O swing or Z swing percentage that is ideal, and you see that there's a lot of people who are pretty aggressive, who are pretty successful. Schebler is really aggressive and has been really successful. But what I like to do, if you see somebody like Cozart, who's had this big jump in performance and effectiveness, one of the things you can look at is, has he changed his approach? Is he swinging
That's a good question.
at less pitches out of the zone, more pitches in the zone? And that's something that he's done this year. Actually, the only thing I can find that's really done this year is he's swinging at a significant percentage of fewer pitches outside the zone and getting himself out less doing that. He's actually swinging at fewer pitches inside the zone too, just swinging
So he's
less.
just generally being more selective.
Yes, and his walk rate has jumped up a lot.
So less than 2 years ago? Because really last year he was hitting good.
Less than last year.
Really? Because he only was a third of the season last year.
Yeah, but he wasn't hitting 340.
You know,
He was hitting well.
but for context, 2 years ago his O swing percentage was about 31%, which is about average. Last year is about 29, so he cut it down a little, and this year it's about 24.
Wow.
So from 2 years ago, to your point, it's about 7%,
Wow.
which is a lot.
That
You
sure
talk
is.
about
That's a
over
big change.
About 1,000 pitches. We're talking about 70 pitches that he's
Wow.
not swinging at. And then the other interesting guy on the Reds, at least, is Votto. Votto's swinging at even fewer pitches outside the zone than he ever has.
I would have never guessed that, by the way. I think he's been more aggressive this year.
Well, that's
But maybe
the great
not.
point. He's far more aggressive than he's ever been inside the zone.
Wow.
He was about 68% swinging inside the zone last year. That's up to 75%, which is a big jump. He is swinging a lot more pitches.
Well, then we have noted what we've noticed is true.
Yeah,
Although that means that he's swinging more at good pitches, which
exactly. That's the key.
And
Is
he's on a tear the past 10 days,
This-
week or 10 days.
This generally tells you, are people swinging at good pitches? Are they being fooled by bad pitches? And one of the guys you look at that's really struggling is Peraza, and he swings at a lot of pitches outside the zone.
Yeah.
Great hand-eye coordination, but it's hard to be successful if you're swinging at bad pitches
Yeah.
frequently.
Even though he's been hitting a little better the last week or so, but that. If he keeps doing that, he's still going to continue to be an up and down hitter, right?
Right.
He's got to be more disciplined, and he'll have fewer ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
He'll be a little more
I
consistent.
feel like it would be hard to do that. I've never been a major league hitter.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it would be
It's-
hard to make yourself stop swinging as much without striking out.
That's,
you know?
that's what makes Cozart's change really
Agreed.
impressive. Is in his 30s, he has really changed the way he's attacking pitches.
And I think it would be easier to do what Votto's done, to swing it more in the zone. That would be easier. But to swing less overall, that would be tremendously hard.
And I'll jump to one other thing. Cozart, I saw a piece on it. I saw it on TV. I read about it. He also has said that this year his stance is different. He rests the bat on his shoulder, and he gets all those other swing thoughts out of his head, and that helps. It's kind of like, that's good golf advice too, right? When you get ready to hit the ball off the tee or anytime, when you're ready to hit, just hit it. Don't stand there and look at it for 10 seconds. You tense up, you tighten up, you start thinking too much. And I think it's sort of the same. That's helped him as well. And maybe that's the reason. Maybe that helps him be more selective as well.
And you guys talked last week, I think, about Votto's influence. And that's something Votto does. You watch him rest the bat on the shoulder. He also does the choke up thing, which Suarez does a lot now.
Yeah, he does.
In at bats. And maybe he's starting to become that leader in the clubhouse that they need.
Yeah.
I've always wondered about that.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem like a great leader.
Yeah, I bet he seems, when good things happen, I see him even more involved in the celebration of things.
Well, there's a story about him
really
taking Jesse Winker to his house for a week in the off season and working on hitting with him.
That's neat.
Inviting him out. So it seems like he's trying to do some things. Maybe he was more individualized in the past, working on his game, but he's trying to reach out to some people now.
No, it's good. Makes him very valuable. I mean, he keeps going like he's going, and there's going to be he's going to get a lot of consideration when it comes to MVP votes.
The Reds right now, you could say have two top 10.
Well, to your thing about the O-swing, the difference between swinging outside the zone, Votto does it 17.5% of the time, and Peraza's almost 40%, almost 39%.
Wow!
So there's a huge gap. That's the gap on the team. Schebler's 33, which probably why his average is what it is.
But
when he hits one, he hits it. He swings at more pitches inside the zone than anybody on the team. So he's an aggressive hitter. When he learns to not be so over aggressive, I think he'll become an even better hitter.
Not too many people learn that.
Yeah.
And note on Votto, that 17.5% is the second best in all of baseball.
Yeah.
Who's the best?
Robbie Grossman from the Twins.
I don't even know
who
that guy is. How many at-bats has he had?
I don't
the
know.
minimum, right?
I don't know. I got to look that up.
All right. Well, let's any more on that discussion. We kind of do you have anything else you wanted to add to it?
Well, I just would say that offense. And you said some of the numbers. That offense, that's a contending offense right now.
What, the Reds?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Defense and offensively, they're a playoff team.
Yeah, in bullpen. That's a
bullpen.
contending team. There's one really important facet of
it just
game.
happens to be that one facet is.
I mean, it might be the most important facet.
Yeah.
They just don't have right now.
It makes you also wonder how bad would the pitching be. I mean, they'd be even worse if the defense wasn't so good.
Exactly.
Right. Well,
which is an argument for having Billy out there.
Exactly. I'm not sure. That's another thing I had here. Billy's future as a leadoff hitter. I was saying this. I was actually reading a blog post. Another Red Light Nation's getting all kinds of props here on our podcast today, and somebody put in a comment on it. I commented on a post the other day. I don't even remember what the whole thing was about, but another guy did. It was about Billy, and one guy pulled out some stats and showed, without having all the numbers, Pete got on base more than Billy does, but Billy scores a higher percentage of the time when he does get on base than Pete ever did.
Wow, sure.
Which isn't surprising, but it's a pretty good difference. It's not just like by 1%. It's pretty significant. Question is, should he be batting leadoff? Should he bat eighth? I mean, he's leading off for one reason and one reason only. He's fast. Is that a good enough reason to be the leadoff guy? I mean, if we had another guy that was a pretty good leadoff guy, or another guy that could bat number 2.
Or do you shift everybody up one and put Cozart at leadoff?
Yeah, do that whole thing and put him ninth again like they did last year. Nobody's doing that. Is anybody doing that this year? Is Madden doing that with the Cubs?
Eighth is an awful spot to hit because they're going to pitch around you to the pitcher.
Well, as long as we don't have the DH in the National League.
That's right. We're going to keep the pitcher.
I like the pitcher.
Yeah, I am outnumbered again.
Nick, you're invited back.
Oh, well. Okay.
I think as long as Billy's hitting over 250, and his on base percentage is over 300. How much better across?
He's more like a 280, 360 on base guy than what the numbers are because. But is that?
I mean, think who's going to do better?
I don't know.
That's the problem.
I think the only option is what you said is Cozart because he's getting on base so much.
Yeah.
But you can be patient with a guy like Billy because he provides value in all these other ways. When he does get on base, he creates havoc, and defensively,
like he had that home run yesterday off the heel of his glove.
I know.
He had. I mean, how many guys can do that? That's a Ken Griffey Jr. kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, we've sort of talked about that a little bit. We got a few minutes left here. Just want to look ahead a little bit. Three of 15 games are on the road in the stretch that began in LA on Friday, and this is a 10-18 road team right now. So those 3 games, we're in San Diego, and then we're coming home for 3 with LA. No, we got somewhere else, and then 3 home with LA, and then back on the road again. So starting from Friday, there's 15 games, and only 3 of them are at home, and they're against the Dodgers, and they're 10-18. That doesn't bode well.
Kershaw too.
Probably hit Kershaw the second time. It'd be a miracle to miss him twice, but it didn't help us this time. But
I mean, we need a good series here with San Diego. We need to win 2 out of 3 of these. That way, even if you have a buzzsaw with LA again, you're still okay in the long run, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we have been saying, I don't know if you heard it, Nick. We talked a couple or 3 weeks ago. We've revisited it. Like, we feel like, we all raise the question, can this team stay within 5 games of first place at the All-Star break? And if they can and get healthy pitching, they got a chance to maybe at least contend and make September interesting. And whether they can do it or not, at least September could be interesting.
And they're 3 out now. And we've always said what kills you sometimes is a 1-9 skid.
Which could happen. I don't think it will.
We were worried it was going to happen this past week with St. Louis and L.A.
Because they've been known to just totally be horrible against St. Louis, but that was a terrific
great.
4 games, right? So there's 2 factors here. There's 20 starting tonight on Monday. There are 26 games before the All-Star break, and we're in this big road heavy stretch. You still think what you've seen lately? You still think, Tom?
I do. I still think we can do it.
I think Kim would probably say yes if he were here.
What
do you think?
Oh man, I didn't want you to ask me that.
You want to say yes, but you don't know if you could.
In 26 games left, they got to win.
You're not betting
12 of them.
You're not betting your firstborn on this. It's just a guess.
The closer it gets to some of those guys getting back in the rotation, the better I feel about it. And so I think they've got a good chance. Part of it is how good the Cubs play, really. You would expect them at some point to go on a run. They've really struggled recently.
Well, and the Brewers looking good, but they go out to Arizona, who's kind of like Reds going to L.A. Similar team playing good ball, and
you just
they didn't have a good series in Arizona.
Yeah. And you don't see Milwaukee running away with it either. Like you could see the Cubs, based on their talent.
When did people take the Brewers seriously, though? When do they?
Well, I've taken the Brewers seriously in the past, and we've seen what's happened in July and August to them.
That they might be a good team. You just don't expect them to have a 8-game lead at the end of July.
Well, they're going to hit the ball, right?
Like
they're going to hit the ball.
That's a team that probably win 80-some can win 80-some games. I don't know if they can win 90 though.
Yeah, you're probably right. As far as being 5 games back of first place at the All-Star break.
Yeah, remember we're recording this. Everyone's going to hear us.
I'm going to say just outside of that.
Just outside of that.
Just outside of that.
All right. Less than 10, but more than 5.
10.
More than 5. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. All right. We can finish up with our trivia here. So last week, there was that play, 75 series, Ed Armbrister played. Do you remember that at all? Have you heard about the stories of that or seen that? All right. Well, there was a play. He bunted. And
Fisk went out.
Fisk went to get the ball, and Armbrister sort of danced a little bit, and it ended up benefiting the Reds. Fisk wasn't able to throw somebody out. The Reds scored. They won that game in the series. Okay, and the umpire that was at the center of that was the home plate umpire, and he was on the TV, being harassed by Red Sox fans forever. So the question is, who was it? Who was that umpire? Do you have any clue, Tom?
We've talked about this before.
Oh, did we talk about it? So what's his name?
I can't remember.
Oh,
I remember players, not umpires.
Dave Barnett.
Dave Barnett.
Okay, he was the umpire. Okay, so that was an interesting question from Kim. Kim's not here, so I got one. And we've actually mentioned two of these guys in this podcast already. So there's a third one. Now, we're not going to answer it.
Right.
But I want to, if you think you know it, say, yeah, I know that.
I think I know this one.
3 Reds pitchers.
Wait a minute. He hasn't even asked the question.
Yeah,
yet.
no.
Come on.
He saw my notes.
I saw the note.
What 3 Reds pitchers have thrown 2 no-hitters? So there's 3.
We have mentioned 2.
We have mentioned 2. So who do you know them? Do you know who the third
I
one
certainly
is?
know the 2. Third. That they've thrown in their whole career or for the Reds?
As a Red. All right, will you ponder that?
Because I was going to say Tom Seaver, but
No, he only threw 1.
and I didn't know if maybe he threw one for someone else.
No, he didn't throw any. No, not even when he went to the White Sox. But of course, he didn't with the Mets because the Mets didn't throw him a no hitter until a few years ago.
That's a great question for the third. I think most Reds fans will know 2, right? But
Yeah, well, yeah, because the one is a famous feat, and the other one's recent. There's another one in between, and who was it? Anyway, he was before my time. I'll say that, and your time. Well, we were alive. For
Just a
most.
tad before mine.
We were a little bit alive for some of it, but not much. So that kind of tells you when it was. So
that's a great question.
yeah. So, well, Nick, we appreciate you being here with us, and
That's fun. You got to come
hope
back.
You had a good
Yes,
time.
this was fun.
Hope you had a good time. So we'll see what happens in all these road trips and late night 10 p.m. games. I know Tom doesn't quite make it to the last pitch of those games.
I'm an old man.
No, I got little kids. I don't
You don't
come
make-
close to me.
you don't make it?
No.
I made it one night. I fell asleep the other night, and I heard him. And I was asleep, and Mesoraco hit that home run, and it woke me up. And I sat up, and I backed it up. And how'd they get the guys outside? I backed it up on the DVR to see what happened,
go.
and then caught up with. And then I was wide awake, and then they didn't win.
That's
anyway.
the way to do it.
Then they didn't win. So I try to stay up some, but I won't make it tonight. I got to be up tomorrow morning pretty early.
And we may be a little delayed on our next podcast because there's a big event happening in the
maybe
Gilbert world.
Maybe. Well, we might be. Yeah, I have a daughter getting married next Sunday on Father's Day, and so we'll see if we can gather next Monday.
Feel
or
like
Tuesday.
it on Monday?
Yeah, it'll be everything will be over with. We're having a little family cookout for lunch. But we'll get together. I'm going to have a bunch of people in my house. Maybe we'll come to your house or something. We'll have to move the studio. So, anyway, well, again, Nick, thanks for being here. And Kim, wherever you are, we wish you well. Don't, stay in your canoe and don't get off the trail and enjoy your time out west. So, with that, we'll just say join us next time. And we'll be here, even though the Reds will rarely be at home the rest of June. Go Reds.
Go Reds.
Go Reds.